Cynthia, thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate it. In particular, really appreciate why you're joining us because you've provided a sponsorship for Autism Personal Coach's virtual course, Self-Defined Living, a personal development course for autistic adults, led and run by the amazing Becca Laurie Hector. Now, as a result of your sponsorship, it's allowed two adults to access the course that might not be able to financially afford to do so. So thank you so much. And just wanted to kind of learn, why was it so important for you to do so?
Well, I believe everyone deserves an opportunity to access self-improvement and tools that will help them live, as Becca would say, their best life. And I certainly didn't want financial constraints to be an obstacle for people who are truly willing and motivated to work on themselves. And, honestly, I think finding your purpose is just a keystone to lifelong happiness. So it's actually my honor to be able to help these individuals who are hungry for that kind of opportunity. It's my honor to help.
So wanted to talk to you today about something that I love, which is writing, and really wanted to talk to kind of from the aspect that you're a writer yourself. You've written several books. I know that some of your writing has dealt with grief and something you were just kind of talking a little bit about, just finding your meaning in life, or for people that have dealt with grief, just finding their meaning again. So in what ways do you think that writing has helped you, or maybe other tools as well, or outlets that some of these other outlets might not have helped you as much as writing?
Well, it's a really good question. And I think that to be human is to experience loss at one time or another. If you're human, then you feel things and you make connections to people. And when those connections are severed for any number of reasons, it's a tremendous hit. And for me, writing, and specifically personal writing, was a lifeboat for me. My husband and I lost a child. She was stillborn. Her name was Samantha. And I was at the very lowest point that I'd ever been in my life. And I was not prepared. I didn't know that anything was wrong. And it really rocked my faith in just about everything: the medical profession, doctors, my marriage, my friendships, my faith in myself. Everything was up for grabs to be knocked down because I was already pretty low. So I was definitely having trouble coping, and I was drowning in sorrow. And so personal writing was something that gave me space to work out the unthinkable, to make sense of something that made no sense, to find a place for it that would allow me to organize my emotions, for lack of a better description, because my heart had just exploded in a million pieces, and I needed to figure out ways to kind of put my life back together. And writing did that for me, and it helped me understand myself. And you talked about other ways that may work, may not work. I think grief is extremely personal. I don't think there's any one way to attack it. I think it's up to each individual for themselves, but one way or the other, the work has to be done. I think the science backs me up, that personal writing is one of the most effective ways to cope with trauma. There are other ways you can certainly talk to other people who've walked down the road that you're going. And I've done that. I found it was helpful, but it did not really fill my yearning for understanding. And I think it had to do with how different each person is. But I definitely talked to other mothers who had lost children, and everyone kind of had their own way, and some were still very broken. For sure, not everyone had healed. So that's one way that people deal with obstacles, is finding others who are in the same boat. For me, as I said, it worked sort of. I really felt there was no substitute for putting pen to paper. And putting pen to paper is free. You can do it anytime you want to. You can do it as many times a day as you want to. You can write the most, foul-mouthed, obnoxious, crazy things that you want to write, because no one else has to read them. You're doing it for yourself. And that is such a freeing thing, to not have to censor yourself when you are such a raw nerve to begin with. So I do find, that as life has gone on, I've had other obstacles and other, losses that have taken place, and I continue to come back to personal writing. It is a path that really, really works for me.
Now, writing, I think, is a tool that can help us in so many different ways, especially just to know ourselves a little bit better, to reflect on our lives. I know for me, it's very helpful in just processing my thoughts and feelings, just getting it down on paper. So I'm wondering, just on the kind of topic of self-exploration and thinking about that, are there some particular techniques or prompts that have been particularly helpful for you to use?
Well, it's a wonderful question. And what sparks creativity? What sparks, where does that impulse come from? And I think that it comes from everywhere. I think that people who are open to it can find a reason or a feeling that calls to them, that will lead to them expressing themselves. And again, what works for one may not work for another, but I think if I were going to give anyone just some good old-fashioned advice on getting started, is don't plan too much, just dive right in. And if you need a prompt of some sort, you could reflect on anything. I mean, you could reflect on something that you've learned recently, and you could riff on that, anything. Like you learned to make pizza, and you wonder in your writing, well, I've always been crazy for pizza. Why did I wait so long to learn how to do it? What was going on with my mind? Was I too caught up in this or that? Did I not make enough time for fun for myself? Or, was I getting wasted and missing opportunities, sleeping in too late? There's just, you could really riff on anything. I do think that the thing you're talking about, the prompt could be not necessarily someone sitting down and writing right away, but if you know that you want to consider a story, or a letter that you wanted to write to someone, or a letter you wanted to write yourself to read 10 years from now, you could go out into nature, do something that you love. If that thing is sailing a boat, or swimming in the ocean, or going for a walk around the block, I do feel that when you are moving, walking, swimming, hiking, I do feel that it does activate something in your mind that allows you to then later come back and be more clear about what you are putting down on paper. I do think that we can draw from nature and find it to be healing and extremely helpful for creativity. And again, you can do it whenever you want to, whatever schedule works for you. It doesn't cost anything. And I guess unless you're renting a yacht to do so, but these are things that you can just go out and do. And you don't need anyone's permission or a lot of money to do so.
Now, something that I am incredibly passionate about is supporting other autistic people. And, you know, something that I'm really interested in that area is autistic representation in all different forms of media. I think we've come a long way, but I think we have a long way to go still. So anytime anyone writes about an autistic character, I'm very interested. Especially when the character is, you know, assigned female at birth, because there aren't enough, I think, accurate character depictions in the media about autistic females. So you wrote a book titled Mind Blown, a young adult novel, in which there was a female autistic character who had to deal with bullies in this story and having her voice heard. So I'm curious, do you see, or where might there be an intersection between advocating for one's needs and writing?
Okay, again, another wonderful question. And I'm going to say that the intersection between advocating for your needs and writing is huge. Number one, you're clarifying for yourself what your goals are going to be. You're putting them on paper and you're looking at them and they make sense to you. And they don't just help you understand your goal, you're expressing to the world around you and your community what those things are, because it's on paper and it's a really grounding thing. So it's very powerful when you can make a statement about what you need and why you need it. And I'm afraid that when people speak, that their words can just float away on the air. And you're trying to catch them and it's like clutching for the clouds. And on the other hand, when you commit your words to paper, they seem to stick and they are read and they are reread and they're passed along and they're copied and pasted and there's a record. And in Mind Blown is still in the manuscript stage. It's sort of a complex young adult novel. It has a lot of things going on in it. It's told through 2 points of view. And it's a love story between a neurotypical who's sort of popular and a sporty guy, and he secretly suffers chronic crippling anxiety. And he meets a spectrumite who's very prickly and whip smart and complicated. And she's very out there about who she is and who she wants to be. I've never cried or cheered so much for one of my own characters as I have for Ray, who's on the spectrum. And I feel like all writing is based on conflict. You can't have a story without conflict. And I think that why I was so moved to write this is because just being a girl in high school, there's plenty of conflict. Being a girl who's autistic in high school, just ramp it up like a million times as far as that goes for dramatic purposes. And I really wanted to explore it. And in my story, Ray turns to writing and she creates a blog. And it is a very mighty tool that she finds in it because others start to find her and she starts to find the tribe that she's looking for, and she starts to find self-respect and self-love. Now, there's also trolls out there and bullies, but, you know, ultimately she succeeds. And she couldn't have really pursued the romance or her self-understanding without writing. It's just part of the story and part of something that I truly believe.
Now, one interesting thing in kind of preparing to talk with you is that it seems that through your writing that you're not afraid to write about kind of different subjects matters, whether it's grief, young adult issues, or horses, as you wrote a book about the history of a riding club. So I think that there could be some or many writers out there that may be anxious to kind of like switch from one topic to another, maybe move out of their comfort zone a little bit. So I'm wondering, how do you think writing books on different topics has maybe helped you as a writer?
Well, I think it's helped me as a person. As a writer, it's helped me because you stretch your wings a little bit and you've got to try something new and unfamiliar and learn as you go. So the first of all, if you were talking to an agent right now, they would tell you don't do that because their job is to help you sell, and they market you, and they brand you, right? That's how they do their jobs. I don't comply with that, and I've made it probably harder on myself as far as establishing a niche, because I just have so many interests, so many different things in this world, and so many different people I find fascinating, and I want to learn about them. And then when I can't stop thinking about them, then I know it's time to write about a particular subject or particular type of character. And I can't comply with what agents really would want and had told me at the very beginning of my career. So as far as subject matter, I couldn't tell someone else how to establish their career, but I think if someone wants to write about something, if if something has meaning to you and it calls to you and it speaks to you, you should definitely explore it. Why not? I mean, you got to have some fun while you're out there, right?
Definitely. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
And beyond our conversation today, how can people learn more about you and your writing?
Well, I do have a website. It's my name, cynthiabaseman.com. And I have little samples on there of blog posts of things that are interesting to me, things about animal activism and lots of horse stories, dog stories. They're mostly personal stories that have happened, and I like to make fun of myself a bit. That's one place you can find me. My books are on Amazon. They're carried by different bookstores, and if you don't see it in your local bookstore, you can ask them to order it for you, and they can easily do that. And I encourage anyone who is interested in writing, you can reach me through my website, and I love to talk to writers. They're some of my favorite people. And if you are out there and you're hearing this and you're thinking about writing a story and you want just to talk to someone about it, I am very, very happy to do so with you.
Wonderful. Well, Cynthia, I was really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much for sponsoring the course and taking the time to talk with me today.
All right. Best of luck with your course, and thanks for having me around.